The Gold Coast, Queensland's second largest city. It's been called one of Australia's most prominent tourist centres, even recognised internationally. It's got its beaches, forest hinterlands, entertainment and nightclubs, and relevant to this video series, some of the country's best known and most enduring amusement parks. And no, this is not one of them. The Gold Coast's first theme parks opened in the 1940s and 50s and showcased the region's marine life and wildlife. And from the 70s to the 90s came the Gold Coast's contemporary parks, which are regarded by many as some of Australia's best. These big four players continue to prosper even today. But despite it topping the polls for some of Australia's best rides and water slides and outlasting many of its northern peers, not even some of the Gold Coast's parks have been immune to fate. In the third part of our mini-series on Southeast Queensland's lost theme parks, we finally arrived to the Gold Coast. Just like our previous episode on the Sunshine Coast, as the availability and reliability of motor transport increased, the area that became the Gold Coast grew in popularity with tourists coming down from Brisbane. A residential region near Southport, known as Alston, was soon renamed in 1933 to Surfers Paradise. The construction of the Surfers Paradise Hotel in the 1920s became a central hub for travelling holidaymakers, and at one point contained a wildlife zoo. The Gold Coast had a rapid, sprawling development compared to its northern coast counterpart, and as automotive tourism grew, so did the region. One of the Gold Coast's earliest tourist attractions was the Currumbin Sanctuary, which was opened in 1947 by beekeeper Alex Griffiths. Still successfully trading today, it's one of the longest running and most recognised attractions of southeast Queensland. In the early 1950s, Gold Coast local Jack Evans opened a set of sea baths by Coolangatta's Snapper Rocks near Rainbow Bay. Evans converted the sea baths into a shark pool, later expanding in 1956 to include a dolphin pool. Evans was the first keeper and trainer of dolphins in Australia, and his dolphin shows became very popular. With the surging waves of the nearby sea often damaging the facility or washing the sharks into the dolphin pool, Evans moved his facility to the mouth of the Tweed River in 1961. And thusly, the Jack Evans Pet Porpoise Pool was born and was a must-see attraction for anyone visiting the area. In 1965, a second marine wildlife park opened, this time in the Southport region, the Spit. Called the Seaquarium, the focus of this new park was of the rescue and rehabilitation of aquatic animals. The park would soon change its name to Marineland, and like Evans's facility, it held live shows with dolphins. In 1970, Marineland attempted to become the first site in Australia to showcase orcas, with the captured whales Ramu 2 and Ramu 4 brought in from Seattle. Both whales would die due to health issues within only 1 year of arrival, and this would have a lasting impact on the park's reputation. Meanwhile, entrepreneur Keith Williams had begun hosting regular water ski shows on Carrara's Nerang River, named the Surfers Paradise Water Ski Gardens. In 1971, the show was moved to the Spit region just near Marineland and was renamed to Skiland of Australia. The following year, Skiland would change its name to SeaWorld and began including marine life exhibits, dolphin shows and swimming facilities, competing directly with Marineland and Evans's Pet Porpoise Pool. SeaWorld would eventually buy up both of its competitors in the 70s, resulting in their closures and transferal of their dolphins. Marineland later became the BirdLife Park, and eventually the Andalusia Park, and in 1987 the area was once again sold off and is now the site of a hotel resort. For something a bit more exotic than the Gold Coast's marine life displays, on the way down to the Gold Coast from Brisbane, drivers could stop by the Lion Safari at Yatala.
Extra special holiday attraction at Bullen's African Lion Safari, halfway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. There's the camel, the donkey and the elephant rides. The all-new mini-circus with Tibby, the almost human lion.
The Bullen African Lion Safari had its early roots in 1920 from a travelling circus run by Alfred and Lillian Bullen. When the popularity of circuses began to decline, brothers Stafford and Kenneth Bullen transformed the family business into a chain of safari parks around Australia. The first site was opened in the New South Wales town of Warragamba in 1968, followed by the Yatala site the following year. Visitors would drive into the park's enclosures in their cars to watch the resident lions. So long as your windows were wound up, you were apparently fine. While the park was successful, it was the source of much anxiety and controversy. Drivers were warned to stay in their cars, but lions were known to jump onto car bonnets or escape the park. There was even one case of an attack on a young staff member. In 1978, one visitor, Ralph Coles, had an unfortunate incident where one of his tyres blew out while he and his family drove through the lion enclosure shortly before the park was scheduled to close. To make matters worse, Coles' car battery had also gone flat. Help eventually arrived to the Coles family, and suffice to say that was their first and only visit to the park. Bullen's African Lion Safari eventually closed in 1988, after nearly 20 years of activity. And for the kids who weren't keen on the lions, Yatala had a less intense alternative named Fantasyland. Built in 1971 around a UFO-shaped service station, Fantasyland was originally a refreshment stop for drivers bound for the Gold Coast. It also included a burger restaurant built out of an old tram. The area would grow to include rides for young children, a swimming pool and an aquatics centre fashioned out of an artificial lake, and magic shows. By the 1970s, this slightly offbeat roadside attraction was bringing in upwards of 2,000 people every weekend. The park's fortunes decreased when a young child allegedly fell to their death from one of the rides. The Fantasyland Park closed soon after, but the UFO service station continued to trade, with an animated space display inside the ship. Plans to build a new overpass at the site resulted in the closure of the service station and removal of the UFO in 1990, although today it's unknown where the oddball space station has since flown off to. So, from the 1950s to the 70s, animal parks, marine life centres and novelty exhibitions were indeed the Gold Coast's common attractions. It wouldn't be until the mid-1970s when the Gold Coast's first modern-day amusement park, and the forerunner to its contemporary parks, opened. One of the most beloved lost pieces of the Gold Coast is Magic Mountain. Long before the likes of Dreamworld or Movie World, Magic Mountain was the place to go for a family fun day out. Magic Mountain sat atop Nobby's Hill, an empty outcrop that overlooked Miami's Nobby Beach and had once been used as a quarry site. In 1961, the area was approved by the Gold Coast City Council to transform it into a tourist spot, and engineer Page Newman constructed a chairlift ride. This was before the days that the Gold Coast was populated with its many high-rise buildings, and the chairlift provided locals and tourists with a breathtaking panoramic view of the area's surroundings. The chairlift attracted over 40,000 people within its inaugural year, and a coffee shop and lookout was soon established on top of the hill. The hilltop site was then bought by George Carrot in February 1976. A medieval-style castle was soon constructed, and it was around this time Carrot's partner and local magician Arthur Coughlin suggested the site be called Magic Mountain.
Magic Mountain open 9 to 5 every day and until 9 p.m. every Friday and Saturday after Boxing Day.
The new park became popular for its illusionist shows hosted by Coughlin, and over the years many amusement rides and swimming facilities were added to the castle site. The new Magic Mountain theme park continued to grow in popularity throughout the 70s. The castle itself was a significant landmark for Gold Coast locals. Its flags were perfect wind indicators for surfers, and by nightfall it could be seen gently glowing on the hill. Magic Mountain was sold again in 1983 to new owners and underwent a massive overhaul with many new rides installed. It was also once used in the shooting of an episode of the Mission Impossible TV series in the 80s. However, during the 1980s, Magic Mountain's fortunes were starting to turn. Competition from newer and bigger theme parks like Dreamworld, Cades County, which later became Wet n Wild, and SeaWorld's recent additions were turning a lot of attention away from the park. In 1987, Magic Mountain announced that it would be closing its doors once more for further redevelopment. The park was soon put back on the market, but no buyers were interested. Magic Mountain's promised reopening did not eventuate, and the area sat empty and derelict for almost 6 years until 1993 when the land was sold off to developers. The Magic Mountain location became a hotel resort and apartment block with its famous castle and all of its attractions demolished. Even more than 30 years since its demolition, Magic Mountain is still a warmly remembered piece of Gold Coast history. Just down the highway from Magic Mountain was Grundy's Entertainment Centre. Grundy's was an indoor-outdoor amusement site at the Paradise Centre on Cavill Avenue, which stood in the place of the former Surfers Paradise Hotel. It was developed by Australian media tycoon and namesake Reg Grundy, and opened in March of 1981. Among its many rides, Grundy's featured a Hollywood-style Walk of Fame comprised of Australian celebrities, spooky animatronic puppets, video game arcades, mini-golf, and a Charlie Cheese pizza playhouse, not to be confused with its American cousin Chuck, but it was best known for its legendary water slide installation overlooking the beach. The water slides were widely loved, featuring in music videos and TV promos, but also suffered a fair amount of controversy during their time. In December of 1985, a patron fell from the water slide while trying to stand up on a sliding mat, and apparently a young rider was injured by the placement of razor blades, but the latter story's credibility has long been dismissed as an urban myth. Despite it being within the heart of the Gold Coast, Grundy's also suffered the ever-classic case of low patronage during the off-seasons and competition with the likes of Dreamworld and SeaWorld. The water slides were closed in 1987 and were eventually removed. Following this, the Grundy organisation sold off the amusement centre, but it did continue on as a gaming arcade when Timezone Australia took on the location in 1993, where it continues to be enjoyed by visitors over 30 years later. Well, there we have it. This brings us to the end of our series on Southeast Queensland's lost theme parks. While doing the research on this series, I learned quite a great deal, especially more about how Sunshine Coast developed differently to the Gold Coast, and why Brisbane never really had much luck or longevity with its own theme parks. And although I was aware of places like Magic Mountain, Super Bee and Amazons, there were numerous obscure theme parks that I'd never even heard of, and a few I came across completely by chance. There were also a few parks that I couldn't find any substantial information or media on, and of course, thanks to the comments I've received, there were a few that I'd missed. Many of the former locations of these lost parks have now been taken up by either residential, commercial, or retail spaces, and a lot of these spaces are lined with street names that pay tribute to their former parks, while other places have little to no monument other than memories of their former visitors. Today, the Gold Coast's Big Four maintain their status, and it's still unlikely we'll see anything from Brisbane emerge on a similar scale anytime soon. And all the while, the Sunshine Coast's more agricultural and zoological focused theme parks continue to hold their own. But as they say, nothing lasts forever, and anything is unpredictable. In the coming years, could any of the theme parks that we currently enjoy in the southeast also fall victim to fate? Only time will tell.